Indeedy. Welcome to the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz, and this is episode number 73, coming at you live and direct from the Vibe Junkie Studios in Oakland, California. 73, bringing in 2023. So grateful you are tuning in. The Upful Life Podcast is proudly sponsored by IMAVL, also known as Independent Arts and Music of Asheville. IMAVL has been preserving and promoting the creative community in Asheville, North Carolina since 2012, gradually watching Asheville become one of the hottest music scenes in the country. IMAVL does all they can do to support those making noise in Asheville and archive history in the making. With live stream installations in several area venues, IMAVL streams shows 6 nights a week, often several shows on any given night, making Asheville, North Carolina the very first city in the world with its music scene aggregated into one channel. Over 3,500 concerts in the archives, national to local acts. There's so much to explore. Not that long ago, IMAVL streamed 7 stages across 4 days straight for the first annual multi-venue AVL Fest. Based out of the world-class Echo Mountain Recording Studios, IMAVL produces an original series called The Echo Sessions. It's 6 seasons deep on PBS with artists from Eric Krasno to La Special, Billy Strings, Leftover Sam, and Marcus King, The Motet, and so many others. The streams are free to watch, a free service for the bands at each venue that IMAVL has production installed in. Now, IMAVL is a non-profit, and fans can donate to their efforts to support the arts by heading to their website, imavl.com, or you can scan a QR code on a recent show from the IMAVL archive. This organization is passionate about the city they live in and its amazing musical community. They've built such a community in a little valley in the mountains, and then IMAVL does what they can do to support their friends and family and share the magic of Asheville, North Carolina with the world. imavl.com. Don't stay home without it. Shout out to my man Josh Blake and the whole IMAVL team. We appreciate the support, the connection. Proud to be aligned with y'all. Before we go any further, I just want to shout out Cold-Blooded Designs. Coldbloodeddesigns.com. It's a brand new endeavor, and it's just basically all about funk. So they got gear, they got artwork, original art, paintings, abstract stuff, really cool, like molecule of funk designs, hats, t-shirts, all kinds of stuff. And I got to shout out my man, Ian Neville. This is his vision. This is his thing. This is his side hustle. And yeah, I'm going to get behind this shit because I'm all about the funk. I'm all about New Orleans. And Ian has always been a wonderful cat, just warm and friendly, and was one of the first locals down there to really make me feel welcome. So the least I can do is reciprocate and let my people know that there's some fresh gear on the scene, cold-blooded designs. And if you really want to be a player, you get one of these pieces of art for the wall at the crib. coldbloodeddesigns.com. Check it out.
Dance me, I feel real nice. Double take, make you look for me twice. Me no want come down on your level. When the lights turn on, I'm a rebel. Cause the beat just a bustin' on me head. Can't hear nothing when you a say. Me no want go home on me bed. Ha, I just saw me stay. I just saw me stay. I just saw me stay. I just saw me stay.
Yes, indeedy. Welcome back to the Upful Life Podcast, episode 73. I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in, who's been supporting the pod, online, offline, who's made this program part of your life. It means a whole lot. And yeah, it's an honor to continue to be a culture reporter and share the stories of artists and people in the community and the music culture at large. And I'm grateful. I want to let everyone know that, per usual, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, and if you have the time and are so inclined, please rate and or review the Upful Life podcast, preferably on Apple Podcasts, but any platform really does a whole lot in sending those algorithms in this direction and bringing new listeners this way. Another thing you can do is just smash that subscribe button. So rate, review the pod, or just subscribe however you get this program. I really appreciate everyone who does that, and I super appreciate when I hear from the people, because I love to hear from the people. So feel free to send me an email, b.gets@upfullife.com. Try to get back to everybody the best I can. Suggestions, constructive criticisms, reflections, anything you want to share with me about the show. I am, just love that. And of course, you can send me a couple of dollars for making you holla. By just cruising to upfullife.com. At the top menu bar, there's a button that says support. So feel free to do that. That's a Venmo link. If you'd rather use something other than Venmo, just send me an email, b.gets@upfullife.com. I'm sure we can figure out a way to make that happen. But you don't have to send me money. You can just tune in. Your attention economy is what's most valuable to me. And that's really what keeps me going. That's the battery in my back. Of course, Upfullife.com is where you can find all things B-Gets, and it is the year-end favorite records extravaganza, a giant compendium. I just put it out a couple days ago, and it's 23 records with reviews. Of course, another 23 recommended, then a bunch of favorite songs and official live releases and DJ sets and mixtapes. It's got playlists, it's got purchase links. And you can support that too. There are links to support inside the article, upfullife.com. That's where you'll find that. And also a feature article I did on the Rumble, which is a great band out of New Orleans. The Rumble featuring Chief Joseph Boudreaux Jr. Shout out to my man Ari Title, who was on this podcast a few months back. I know people really liked that episode, so it's coming full circle. And we're listening to Nubian Twist out of the UK, great sort of jazz dance crew. The song is called So Me Stay, Nubian Twist. And now let's get into episode 73 of the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz. Yes, indeedy.
And I won't come down. I just saw me stay. up in fashion. I miss the long night where we dream right through each other's devastation. Miss the prayers we'd say to bear the weight of all this crazy making. Miss the blissful shaking, heartfelt state we claim for making love until the dawn. And I miss the stars dripping thick like honey from your heart.
It is indeed honor, privilege, pleasure to welcome Ms. Marya Stark to episode 73 of the Upful Life podcast. I've had the opportunity to work with Marya creating a bio and doing a story on her for her most recent record called Weightless, which we talk about quite a bit in this conversation, which was had at the end of the summer. I've held on to it a little bit. Wanted to get it in 2023. Marya is a singer-songwriter with a lengthy history, long before I encountered her a few years ago now, I suppose. But she's somebody who has been in the sort of festival community and folk music scenes out here on the West Coast. I've been aware of her for a long time, kind of connected with her through the Starling Arrow project she did with members of Rising Appalachia and Alinario, Tina Malia. We talk about that. We talk about her different records, her journey to music, and her most recent, really just stunning record, which is on my favorites of the year. It's called Weightless. You're hearing the title track to the record in the background. You can check out her bio on my bio of her on her website and also on upfullife.com. And I'll have some links in the show notes of how you can find out more about Marya Stark, but you're going to find out a whole lot right now. Episode 73. Marya's in Idaho when we're talking. I'm here in my office in Oakland, and we had a cool conversation. Here it comes.
Stars dripping thick like honey from your heart. Your dark light beating brightly in the night.
All right. Well, it's early morning here in Oakland and a little bit less early in Idaho, but I have the pleasure and privilege of speaking with Miss Marya Stark, who is a very unique and wonderful artist that I've had the pleasure of enjoying her music and working on some projects with her. And we decided we were going to do a podcast. So welcome to the Upful Life podcast, Marya Stark.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, the feelings are mutual. And when you say be here, we're not in the same place. So tell me a little bit about where I'm talking to you from and what you're up to.
I'm on my way to Lowman, Idaho, which contain my personal favorite hot springs that I've ever been to, because Lowman, Idaho is a place where within like a 40-minute drive, there are 5, at least that I know of, natural thermal hot springs. Some of them, in fact, are hot springs waterfalls, which means that there's hot boiling water flowing down the side of the mountain over a cliff that turns into a waterfall and gathers in little pools below before it goes into the freezing cold river. And it's just outstanding. And so me and my partner have made it an annual trip to come up here to enjoy the hot springs waterfalls of Lowman, Idaho.
Oh, you make it sound so amazing that I'm going to have to throw it at my partner. We love hot springs. She really loves hot springs. And we've been looking for like a cool adventure off the beaten path place that we wouldn't otherwise frequent. This checks a lot of those boxes, though. And if you vouch that it's your favorite and you're a hot springs expert and it's your number one, then I think we got to go.
It's my number one for that I've been to so far in terms of natural like out in the wild hot springs. It's just, there's nothing like being out in the wild and naturally formed hot springs that are so they're so beautiful. I mean, I was stunned with the beauty last year we came out here. And so, yeah, it makes me super happy to come. I love hot springs. I'm a hot springs fanatic. The wild waters of the earth that come up boiling hot, and it's nice. I like it.
Yeah, definitely. And you've been a busy, artist, person, human of late. You have a pretty active career outside of music that works in concert with your music, and I want to get into that a little bit. But you've also been on the go a lot, and I understand you were just down in Asheville for a big event, debut annual festival called Catalyst with your friends in Rising Appalachia. Could you tell us a little bit about your personal experience traveling from the West Coast to Catalyst, and what was the first festival like?
Well, I'm so impressed with the troop vibes that Rising Appalachia has generated in their community and in their team. And you could feel the love. That was my biggest takeaway. It's just like, oh, the love here of their crew coming together to throw down and have a really happy experience. And the venue was really sweet. It was very contained. It was right on the river. It was at the salvage station. And it was a great location. And a lot of festivals, just depending on the size, they have multiple stages, everything going on. I really like the size of this. There's one stage, one thing going on. They had great workshops during the day. It was hot. It was summer in the South, but there were storms. Dirtwire played, Valerie June played, the Reminders played, and Starling Arrow played. Me and the ladies of Starling Arrow, Ayla Nerio, Tina Malia, and of course Rising Appalachia. And yeah, the festival overall was super sweet, really fun, just wholesome, multi-generational. It ended before midnight. It's like these, for me, I really appreciate this kind of down home environment, and it was lovely. And the last night, of course, was so beautiful because the closing set for Rising Appalachia set, they had this surprise giant light puppet show that came and took over the audience, which is, I don't know what it is about puppet parades, but they make me cry sometimes. And I was ripe for the weeping at that moment. And it came out, and I was just a mess of joy. And
I love that. I love those kind of cries to music, especially in community. And I don't know, my wife sometimes chuckles at me because I'm quick to shed a tear when the emotions run thick with music. So I love to hear that it grabbed you like that, and that you let them flow, because sometimes that's really freeing and liberating. Especially, I can't imagine what it's like for you. You're an artist, and you still maybe have to comport yourself in some sort of way. So to just let the emotions come over you in the closing ceremony, it really speaks to the power of that experience. And I sure hope that we can make it out there next year, and that listeners are intrigued and curious to hear about Starling Arrow, about a lot of the other artists you mentioned that played, in addition to Rising Appalachia. And I've been a fan of yours from the outside looking in, just knowing you moving around in the same music communities as me out here on the West Coast. But it wasn't really till the Starling Arrow thing took shape that I really, really got into what you're about as an artist. So let's talk about your journey, because I know that, I found you in Northern California. From what I understand, though, you're from the desert, Arizona. That's where you kind of trace your roots. So tell me about the early days of Marya Stark, like discovering your muse through music. Maybe what were some of the first artists you loved, or maybe some of the first performing experiences that something greater than you told you that this was your calling. Just take me back to the nascent, embryonic Marya.
yeah, well, I have my first experience of like having or that I can really remember, of having a wild multi-dimensional ecstatic state experience, was when I was alone in a room with huge acoustics, just singing at the top of my lungs. Like something came over me. I was singing, and the echo and the bigness and the like wildiness, I definitely felt like I was on ecstasy, or I had hit some kind of state magical thing. And ever since then, I always loved music, and I was always singing it, but like there was something that popped open in that moment. I was like, oh, this music thing is a portal to like God mind. Something else can happen with the sound, and I can participate in that. And that was really powerful experience as a little kid, to just feel that. And I grew up in choir, grew up in singing. I was always into it. I was always supported by my parents. In 7th grade, I wasn't happy at the school I was at. My mom found an performing arts school that I went to, and music and theater became my everyday experience. And I had some really amazing performance experiences then, like being in choir, singing in huge cathedrals, traveling all over the world, singing in huge cathedrals. I got to have, as a 15-year-old, the experience of singing at one of the amazing theaters in Phoenix, the Opium Theater, like a huge 2,000 or 3,000 person venue for our school show. We did The Sound of Music as an all school show, and I got to play Maria in that show, which was rad. And so it was the first time actually being on a huge stage as a solo vocalist, doing like calling in the character, and it was amazing. And I was like, oh, so it was like, okay, this is like really fun, having like a choir backing me up with the orchestra down below and the dancers. It was like a whole parade on that place. So I was like, this is great. I love this experience. I could have more of these experiences in my life. And at that point, I had just started writing songs, maybe around 13, 14, 15. I got a guitar when I was 16. I was playing piano a lot and like figuring out songs that I loved, like just became possessed with self-study of songs that I really loved. I probably learned 100 or 200 of my favorite cover songs and just like really sunk my teeth in, like, what makes this good? Why do I like it? What's interesting about the lyrics? And studied the song forms, and then taught myself that, cool, I'm going to just try a bunch of stuff as a songwriter. They started really tumbling out as a young person, totally unprovoked. It was very spontaneous and emergent. But then when I went to college, I studied music therapy. I went to Chapman University. They have a great music school there. And I knew about the music school. I went there to study vocal performance and be in their performance choir, which was an international touring choir led by Bill Hall, who is this like famous choir director, totally interesting cat, and like some really amazing opera teachers who I got to study with. Carol Neblett, she was fucking rad. But I didn't like love opera. I wasn't trying to be an opera singer, and like there was more, and I was writing songs. And I discovered at Chapman University, in their music school, they had a program for music therapy, and I took the intro to music therapy class my first semester, and I was sold. I was like, this is the most beautiful thing that I have ever learned about. It was music. It was the study of music in all cultures. It was the study of music as a medium for connecting to what it truly is to make us human beings, and like learning all about the psyche and spirit and the body, and like music ethnicology. Like it was everything. It was all of it. For me, it was just the doorway, and it was a place of study that I could explore myself as a writer and a songwriter through the lens of music therapy and sound healing and culture building and community and working in small groups of people. And so from there, I was really like, I feel like that set the tone for everything else I've been into since then. I've just studied energetic medicine and mythology and spirituality and meditation, but all of it kind of was centered around what got initiated for me in that intro to music therapy class, which was working with a doula who was working with music at the beginning of life and at the end of life. So she was there working with the prenatal babies and moms and preparing the birth experience, and then working with people while they were dying. And I was like, damn, like it felt really to me like music as the shoehorn between dimensions, you know what I mean? And that was very exciting to me as a 18-year-old philosophy, like this new philosophy of spirit and sound and vibration and like what humaning. And so, yeah, it spun out from there. Those are the early days of Marmar.
No, I love it. You really articulate things just beautifully and really engaging to hear you like revisit that sort of wide-eyed wow of the music therapy curriculum at that really, the world is your oyster, 18, 19 years old, leaving home, going to college, and then coupling that with your, the musicology, like getting inside the songs and getting inside the characters, the protagonists, the way the music is constructed at that time, like it really, really early on. It speaks volumes. And so does the opera stuff, because, I wouldn't put my finger on it, but I've always noticed you have this like very celestial, royal nature to your vocal, like whatever the song, which is perfect for something like Starling Arrow, but really shines in the solo, uh, format. Was there like a theme when you were growing up for young people to come together and share their music, like outside of like school band or the traveling group that you worked with? Was there like off the beaten path? Did you get together with people and play in the desert or open mics or stuff like that?
Yeah, there was when I got to Chapman, I mean, in high school, we had at school, we had cafe nights quarterly. And so we'd go and share our songs there. So that's when I first started playing like my original music in front of my peers. But then in college, there were open mics just in the town of Orange. There were other open mics in Santa Ana, and I met like the whole kind of young singer-songwriter community at Chapman, and then also kind of the local area. Some of them I'm still friends with, Lex Land, Jordan Moser, Witten was among one of those. These are like sweet songwriters that I met in that time. Just loved their music and learned from them, and we'd hang out every week without one of our houses, share new songs, and it was very activating just to be in the round regularly, writing new songs, having a crew to share them with, and learn from what their influence is so different than mine, and my style was definitely impacted by hearing their songs and what they were into and how they were going about it. And then the open mic circuit in the Southern California area started getting my feet wet, playing songs in front of people, playing new songs in front of people, and kind of just went from there, from having my first show ever in Orange County, or in the Ugly Mug, which was one of the open mic spots right by my college. That's where I had my first solo show that I invited people to, made flyers for, and everything. That was super fun.
And so you were playing original music that early, that show, for instance, you brought a bunch of your own songs?
Yeah, I think I was 19 and I did an hour and a half set of my own songs.
Wow. That's truly impressive. And again, shed some light to the beginnings of your journey as an artist. So at what point in time did you pick up the guitar? Do you write the music on the guitar? And would you say that that's your instrument, or do you have an instrument?
I picked up the guitar at 16. My brother Nick got me a guitar for my birthday. And that's when I started learning. I started taking some lessons, and that became my more of my instrument. I had played the piano before then, and I love the piano, and I still love to compose on the piano. But I'm a stronger composer, I think, on the guitar. I'm a stronger player on the guitar. And that I would call the guitar my main instrument besides my voice. Although I do have a harp, and I have been learning how to play the harp and the bodhrán and the thumb piano and loop stations. I like to get into other kind of instrumental plays. I've picked up little things on different instruments here and added them to compositions when I can, because it's fun. You can make a song out of anything. But I really started writing a lot more songs on the guitar once I bought it. That was my main outlet for songwriting.
Gotcha. Right on. And let me talk to you a little bit about, because you have a number of records and different projects, and almost like different chapters of your journey. One record sounds different than the next, and then that next one different than that. You've had different collaborators. I don't think we can go through every record, every collaborator, but I do want to kind of brick by brick the journey of your releases, building up to the most recent. Take me to your debut record. What was your situation making that, and how has your process grown from the debut?
Yeah, well, I count The Garden as my debut album. That was complete, although I had a live album before that. That was my senior thesis, which was The Fork in the Road, which was a concept album about someone's journey through addiction recovery, which was actually a music therapy program that I ran for several years at addiction recovery centers in Santa Cruz. So that was my first recorded, documented, shared record. But my first studio album that got completed was The Garden. And I had recorded some demos at a friend's song. That demo got into the hand of Andy Zenzak in Santa Cruz. He invited me for a free recording day to record the song Crossroads. And he and I really liked working together. And I loved being in a proper studio with someone who could just guide the process. And it was like an excellent collaborator. I just really have learned so much from Andy about how to think about producing a record, and that I feel like The Garden was the place to just explore all of that and have a great time and learn all kinds of stuff about string arrangements and how to arrange songs, what's possible here.
We shall dance to the rhythm of a trance amidst the bounty of our thoughts, and the fruits they bear do taste of the passions we have sought by the fashions of our hair.
And then I've worked on many projects in between. Then I'd say I had I learned how to work in Logic myself so that I could start doing kind of lighter collaborations. I worked on a kids album that I released that was also kind of like a thesis project. I kind of go back and forth between making art for myself and then doing sort of like a ministry thought piece, like a project that's about documenting some kind of songs I wrote for a curriculum. So I did that. I did my kids album curriculum that was based in energetic medicine, the medical Qigong studies that I did. Then I worked with Carmen Gutierrez, Mama Crow, for Scarlet Crow with Remembrance. That was a combination of 6 of her songs that was really steeped in exploring the divine feminine and exploring kind of the history of for me, Witch Burning Times and the Magdalene Laundries and some other hidden shadows of the feminine. Her songs were really deep as well, in a well of self-discovery and exploration of the psyche, and also the kind of old feminine lost oracle codes is how I would define it. She might define it differently.
How did that collaboration come together? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's interesting. How do you find Mama Crow, and how do you kind of come to that project? What was the vision for it? And
she and I had known each other for a long time when I first moved to the Bay Area, and had learned each other's songs, played on each other's songs for years in the festival community. And then I put on a show in Santa Cruz to release Unstoppable Joy, which was a single, and I invited her to dance at that show for Crossroads as the embodiment of that. And then she asked, she provoked actually, hey, do you want to go on a tour together and explore some of the kind of, that show I had debuted Hammer of Witches and Scarlet Moon to the community, and I had created this concert immersive kind of ritual experience. And she wanted to take it further and do some stuff together and unpack what her and I could do and what she could bring to the table. And so we created Scarlet Crow as the Remembrance tour. And then we went down to LA, and it kind of unfolded from there. And then we documented the songs into Remembrance. We had Yegon of Kali Scintilla co-produce and mix that album, and rode that wave for a while.
Right on. Thank you. And just, I was curious about that. And that is slots in after The Garden and after the Qigong for Children, Crystal Kids.
After the
right?
Qigong for Crystal Kids, and then before Lineage. So that was the preamble to Lineage. I'd say Lineage was deeply informed from the circling that we were doing with our mentors at that time, and unpacking those songs for me was a really powerful experience. I also did some training in storytelling, and I went further in deepening my own personal studies around womb work and womb healing and facilitation and circling, and had started being in a lot of group experiences with women who are wanting to open their voice. And I started writing songs to support that, and all the songs from Lineage happened really quickly. They got written very quickly within a few months, really. Working in the Yoniverse monologues with my friend Serena, who is a storyteller, working with women to unlock their voice and tell their story, like come out of the shadows of the story they were telling about their lives. And I was deeply informed. I was in that storytelling project, and I moved through so much healing, as a music therapist or as an expressive arts therapist, which I had been for many years. I had not been in an expressive arts therapy container where I wasn't a facilitator. And so to be in a facilitated process by one of my close allies and get to have the experience was like, holy shit, this is such deep medicine. And then all of these new songs came forward where I was like, okay, now all this music's coming forward. And Lineage got recorded very quickly and was really for the women, it's for the circles of women trying to open their voice and doing womb healing work. Again, it was another one of those like ministry albums. It was like, here's the album for the art that we did, like the soul craft magic, and like, here's the ministry album again, And so this is that Lineage came out. It was like kind of quick and dirty. I did it very just like, I went into a deep retreat by myself for a week offline, and I love working that way. And I just like recorded this all in one go. And then I had some friends sing on it afterwards and like mixed it, quickly. And then it was out. I didn't think a lot about it. I was like, this is going to be fine. But it's become my most popular album, which was surprised. I'm not surprised, but I wasn't anticipating it. I wasn't considering it because it's, it was just something I was doing for the moment to respond to the ask of the community. And there it was. And I was like, and those songs have really been a bedrock of my life's work since it came out, which is amazing. Again, not something I planned for. It kind of felt like it was always going to happen. Like when I was in college studying music therapy, it was part of my thesis to do a whole body of work around women's shadow. At that time, I was calling it the shadow feminine, but and now it's emerged as like, oh, it's women's womb work. It's like what's been sort of swept under the rug. And so it was there in my original thesis statement as a 22-year-old, like, I'm working with the women, in this chapter, I'm going to do the kids, I'm going to do the women, I'm going to do the sound healing. Because in my thesis, I was like, oh, these are the communities. These are the kinds of musical rooms I want to build to respond to the different kinds of things that I feel like I have musical medicine for. And so the women was one of them, and I knew it was going to be a deep chapter. Scarlet Crow is a big part of that chapter. Even that chapter started before that with On the Garden. You have Crossroads. That song Crossroads on the Garden was kind of like the first song that started to like push itself out. That was kind of leading the charge on that whole archetypal shadow feminine underworld journey. And it continues, and it's still continuing. I'm making an album right now that's the next chapter of that journey.
And the bearing of these bones to the birthing waters, where I find myself reborn. I honor my lineage.
Anyway, there's Lineage, and then Lineage popped out, boom, and been riding the Lineage wave, and then I made Sapphire with Joshua Penman of Akara, who again, Akara was one of my favorite projects while it was alive. So good. Joshua and I became friends just because he's a real music composer nerd, and in a good way. Like, he's an adept. He's a master, a specific kind of soundcraft and melodic definition, and like it's so beautiful what he does, and how his mind thinks about music has really shaped how I think about music. And he and I got into Sapphire, and this was this whole other madness, and I was so wholeheartedly just like dove right into Sapphire to make this like opulent. I wanted to make the Sapphire world, like the opulent kind of Avalon, Atlantis, Lemurian, like remembrance of the deep sort of nectar of the soul. Like there was some deep soul nectar I was trying to access, this like fuck with soul essence that was like outside of modern kind of like cranky crunch time. And so I feel like that's probably the most celestial record, because I really wanted to have a room that was just like blue velvet, honey blue. I was like, I just wanted to like, I feel like, and when I reflect on that album, I'm just like, man, my adrenals were so tired. I just wanted to spend 3 years like hanging out in adrenal recovery, like just to heal my kidneys. Like that album was just to like try and heal my kidneys from being exhausted on being on planet Earth for so long. And Sapphire came out during lockdown, which was, interesting timing. It came out during the like part of the weird dark black skies from the fires. Like it was really chaotic fire season when the album came out. And so I had like an online listening party for the album. My friend Tessa, instead of us going on tour, I had Tessa make like a whole visual album that is just animated lyric video through the whole album. And we presented that, we made it for the release party. And we had a group of 100 people in the online listening party in our own little homes, and everyone's like just like feel like in their little rooms in this listening party with Sapphire while it's like bleeding like ghosty smoke death outside.
I see you from across the way. I'm a storm chaser who feels the burning of a flame, and the colors rising, touching the endless night, painting aurora's light in the northern lights. I'm a storm chaser.
And it was just interesting timing. I was like, okay, well, this is like, it's a great remedy for the chaos, and it was not what I wanted, but it felt like, okay, this medicine came at this time. This is what's happening. Here we are. And instead of going on tour, I went right into waitlist land, the day after Sapphire came out, literally I went into the studio to start recording Waitlist. That's the ride. Oh, but in between there, of course, we got a name. We made the album Cradle with the ladies of Starling Arrow, which that coming together was very unexpected. It was just sort of, again, emergent response to what was happening. Tina and I met right before lockdown. We got together, we were teaching together, and her and Leah were talking about like needing to like create a space for their own songwriting. Tina came to one of my songwriting classes and was like, can you help me? I want to write songs. And I was like, you should take one of my classes. She's like, I think Leah wants to join. I was like, we should do a private. She's like, maybe Chloe wants to join. I'm like, okay. Aleph caught wind of it. She's like, I want to be in there. I'm like, okay, we're doing this. And we started writing songs every single week during lockdown, just like in the round again, kind of like that thing you asked me back in college. It was the first time I'd been in the round like that in a while. And it felt really good to every week for over a year come and like write some random ass song about whatever kind of thing we came up with, just concocted all kinds of hilarious, deep research projects for our songwriting to just have something to do. And it was a lifeline. It was a lifeline during that time. That time was so intense psychologically, and that was like the saving grace of my whole life at that time. And we made this album. We didn't plan on it. We were just going to write songs and have this like secret little like muse circle. It was like, this is for us, it's not for the realm. But the realms decide sometimes for you. And I feel like the songs we got together, the synergy was so beautiful. We're like, okay, well, we'll document some of this and share it. And we did. We released Cradle in February. It was just a joyful, beautiful ride. Also kind of just organic, lightning in a bottle, just caught it real fast. And actually singing with those girls at Catalyst was so beautiful because that was only the third time the 5 of us had been together ever.
Comes back later. Marrow of the hollow, born from the shadow, sparrow to the meadow, fly away, fly away. stolen. Fly away, fly away. Wings on the wind of a borrowed song. Take me to the temple wanting. Night on a melting nettles drawn. Ever in the dance of dawning. Night and her maiden solo.
The first time we came together was to finish recording the album. We started, not the five of us. We finished recording the album together with the five of us. First time we were all together in person, and then we got together last year once to make all the music videos in a week and have one show. And then 1 year later, we're all five together again. We're playing at Catalyst, and so it's just been this dreamy, otherworldly thing, and that's been such a gift to share that music, which for me I think is also kind of like medicine light, it's just like sweet, and then Weightless has also been for me in this time of like light sweetness. I'm working on like a couple albums of just like lightness, because I feel like Scarlet Crow was deep and like mystic and like in the trenches of the dark, of the shadow. And Lineage, same. It was like kind of in this, like, I was in this whole Scarlet Moon archetypal journey of recovering all of my like unconscious, disowned feminine shells. And Sapphire was also deep and mythic, but it was like deep and mythic in this like unconscious Eros, like in love with something I'm never gonna have kind of drama. And I love drama. I'm a theater nerd. I'm into the drama, but it's been nice to be in a season of like no drama, of just like, we're making songs that are nourishing. It's nice. And Weightless for me, there's a little drama in Weightless, but like as an architecture of a concept to ride, it's a little lighter. It's sweeter. It's not like some big mythic kind of realm to like sink my teeth into. Those are coming. I feel like my teeth have gotten sharpened again, and I'm ready for that after all this like sweetness. But anyway, that's a bit of my album ride.
Oh, I love it. And there's so much. First of all, you did a really wonderful job taking us through each of the waves and the chapters and the detours and some of the collaborators and your mindset and your your physical space, your emotional quotient, as I like to say, as you created each of them. There's lots I want to ask, but I'm just going to try to pick out a couple. As an artist, okay, so you came onto my radar with Lineage. I think we talked about that off the air last time. That was like the first time I heard your music, connected it to you as somebody that I recognized from sort of the West Coast festival, conscious communities, etc. Like I put your name with that body of work. And you say that's, in essence, your most popular or most well-known record, but it's the outlier in the journey from like, beginning with The Garden and up through Sapphire. And I'm curious if, as an artist, when you see that people resonate with that sort of sidebar or that detour or that rabbit hole, are you inclined to pursue that further? Like you say, you're making something that's in essence the successor to Lineage next, right? Are you driven by the muse, or do you want to make something for your fans who have been waiting for the next Lineage, or does that even enter your creative like headspace?
I mean, I think about it. I have thought about it, because again, I make art both driven by my own kind of like, I get sort of possessed by certain like curiosities and that drives my process. And there was a moment when Lineage came out, and it's like so out there, and like more songs of that ilk have come just from being in circles with women singing songs, so there is another collection of songs. But funny you should ask this question, because I thought that I was going to record the next chapter of that album, and I thought it was going to go a certain way. And then like the process of making that album has baked 3 separate projects, because they weren't actually all like the curiosity, which we'll call the like lead muse, was trying to like link up with the like these other songs that were like kind of in the same river of chi, but like not like defined. And then these other songs were coming in, but they weren't quite there. And so they actually like forked into like 3 different projects. I don't know if I'll get to the other 2 projects, but the one of the project I would say has like is informed by lineage, but it's its own archetypal deep dive. It's not, and it's another concept album, and it's not just circle songs to sing. There's a few in there that they made it by the like skin of their shorts, you know, they barely made it in there. And it's funny because there's a part of me that's like, oh, I want to have like I have like my own desires of like, oh, I want to create this thing that's for this purpose, and then like some other thing takes over. Whereas like with lineage, I didn't think about it that way. I wasn't thinking about writing songs for women to sing. I was composing songs in the moment for women to sing. So I'm like, oh, I should document these, and then it happened. It wasn't like I'm gonna do this thing, the big me with the pen who makes all the decisions. Like it doesn't work like that. I'd say that whenever I try to do something like that, it fumbles into some like paradoxical clown world for a while, and then I'm frustrated, and then the actual thing happens, and I have to like sort of die to my ideas of that I was gonna be in control of something, you know.
It's an interesting window into how songs get released. You know, they get created, they don't always see the light of day. The artist is navigating their own personal journey and where the music aligns, and maybe if a song had come out of you 5 years sooner, it might make the record. 5 years from now, it might make the record. But in the here and now, you're drawn to this and not that. It's just really, you know, it's interesting. You're one of the most, I don't want to say like, if the word's like integrity or what, but the way you follow your own creativity and your muse, and you allow like self to just go there with the music and your collaborators, like not really dictated by industry norms or popularity or a yearning to get booked at a festival or all this sort of like normal, for whatever reason, like the industry stuff that drives artists, that, you know, metric things that are little like voices in their head that guide their, whether they like it or not. I hear none of that from you. It's not reflected in any of the music. I told you how left field Sapphire was for me, but I'll go on the record to say that I'm most fond of Sapphire now that I've kind of had the whole journey. And I'm excited for Waitlist because I like the companion album idea of the grandiose and heavy and overwhelming, and then the sort of really stripped, raw, barren vulnerability, like yin and yang. I'm excited to see what my own relationship will be to Waitlist on the heels of Sapphire, and your fans too. And then of course you're going to throw them another curveball and get back into the shadow work with the next album, and keep us on our toes. And I think that's a mark of a really you know, awesome artist, somebody that's driven by something other than industry norms or popularity or career, you know. But you know, don't get it twisted. I mean, your career is so much bigger than your recorded art. It's your teaching, it's your community building, therapy. I want to finish there. How do you see moving forward your work with music therapy and doulas and beginning of life, end of life, and actually life itself while we're here, making the most of ourselves, our creative muses, our partnerships, our time here? How do you see your work and your art continuing to move in concert moving forward?
Thanks for asking that. It's a beautiful question. I feel like I'm in this stride right now of like wanting to, and I've been playing with this concept of building the temple of the muse, right? Which is my organization for education. But it's also the place where I'm hanging all my art on the walls, you know? And like, I feel like each room in the temple of the muse has this like kind of luminary spirit of like music magic that wants to go in there, and and it has a big amphitheater too in the temple of the muse, and I want to spend a lot of time in the amphitheater making weird, fun, joyful, griefful stories. Like I love deep immersive experiences. I want to make as many albums as I can while I've got this wind in me to do it. So I feel like really that's a big part of the work right now for me, is to really allow the things that are inside to be outside, like to really allow it to have the completion. And there's going to be, things. And there's those voices of being like, I'd love to have, it's always funny. I've always struggled with like not having congruence as an artist in terms of like having a defined sound or like thing, because it's not motivating to me, except for like, oh, I can hire myself as a tour, like now I can like really communicate with my audience or whatever. That like idea, like you get trained as an artist early on, like this is how you brand yourself. Like I've always been a natural, like I try that stuff on and it's just like silly, it doesn't work. It's not effective in that way. But what has been effective for me is just the joy of making art that's happening right now that I love, and like having different moods and committing to them all the way, and they don't have to relate to the last mood except in my own inner mythology, and they're all related in my own mythology, but that doesn't have to translate to the community. They can each serve their own purpose outside of my identity with it. And I'd say for my like bigger work of creating hosting spaces for just being a stand for people's creativity. I feel like me being in my work as an artist is taking a stand. That's living my purpose. And then the spaces that I hold within songwriting workshops and my longer courses with women, Voice in My Womb continues to be a space to support humans to remember. And it's like a special kind of recovery and therapeutic process of just being incarnated in a weird ass realm with a lot of distraction and pain. And creative process is a way to draw the nutrients out of the suffering experiences, and metabolize them, assimilate them, make something beautiful, have time to integrate. And so I like hosting those spaces. It feels natural to me. I'll probably do them in ways that will keep going. And I do see myself as in my later life, working really a lot with the dying. I'd say that's probably where I'll spend most of my later life. But for now, it feels like, being that music inspires me in the way of being a bridge between worlds. I feel inspired to continue seeing what worlds want to come through now that can support both the grief and the celebration of being alive through the art, through experiential immersions, through inviting people to connect with their own delight through creative savoring. And I'd say that's the center point of my work. The center of gravity of my work is to ignite, inspire full feeling, savoring the delight of life and all its flavors, and doing something with that.
Oh, I'd love to come back to this dialogue down the road, another couple records, hopefully not another quasi-apocalypse, but just see the work in the world, the songs in the world, and ourselves in it, and revisit it. I mean, people come back on the pod all the time, so consider this an invitation down the road so we can further unpack some of these ideas for a longer time and talk about more songs, more life, and all that good stuff.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a joy to talk with you about music. I really appreciate your curiosity and in these conversations with music and art history. It's wonderful.
Well. Long time in the making, this one. Been meaning to get with this very special guest for some time, but finally the stars aligned at our dear friend Kelly's magical tea house just outside Santa Cruz. It's called Art and Zen, and that's where I finally connected with Wren Lizabeth, formerly known as Jillian Ashley or Jill Trashley, of the NOHM Co and the MerTails and the Village Witches Elixir Bar, and one of my dearest friends on this rock. I met Wren, then Jill, over a decade ago, and our relationship has taken many turns and forms and evolutions, and I have learned a great deal about life, about sustainability, about consumerism, about zero waste, and so much more from not just her work, but just the way she moves through life. And it's been an honor and a privilege to just be in her orbit. A little bit about Wren is she's an entrepreneur, a bioregional chef, a community herbalist with deep holistic knowledge in guiding conscious consumer experiences and also stewardship of lands and dynamic spaces. She founded the NOHM Collective in 2015 after realizing there was a deep intrinsic need in her community for a more meaningful connection, more conscious consumption, and more accessibility to self-care. Over the past 8+ years, the NOHM Collective has successfully curated health and wellness services all over the place. Festivals, parties, installations, virtual, in-person. They facilitated herbal education and, of course, alcohol-free bar installations nationwide and internationally in Costa Rica, Canada, and the UK. Most recently, Wren refined her craft in elixir mixology, and she brought to market the MerTails, elixirs as mixers, which are available on the non-alcoholic menus of select bars, breweries in the Asheville area, which is home base for the NOHM and for Wren Lizabeth. So like I said, this is long overdue, long in the making, and Wren has had just a remarkable effect on just the prism through which I see life and how I apply those values and ideas that she was instrumental in bringing to light for me, and as I've come to know hundreds, if not thousands, of other people. So without any further ado, Wren Lizabeth of the NOHM Co and the MerTails, the urban herbalist herself. All right. Well, I am hanging out here in Moss Landing, just outside of Santa Cruz, at the lovely and beautiful and ornate Kelly Marie's very special tea house called Art and Zen here in Moss Landing outside of Santa Cruz. So first, before we start, thank you to Kelly Marie for hosting us in her lovely space. This is a long-awaited conversation. I feel like I say that often on episodes, but few of them are as long or as awaited as this one. So welcome to the Upful Life podcast, my dear friend Wren Lizabeth from the NOHM Co, the MerTails, and numerous other endeavors we're going to hear all about. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show, B. Pleasure to be sipping tea here with you.
Yeah, it really is. It's a pleasure to be here amongst dear friends, family at this point, and we first came to know each other at a very special time in our lives and place at Spirit of Swanee, where I just recently returned. You joined us for our wedding a year ago, and in the meantime, I've been following your gallivanting around the globe, basically at this point, doing your thing, making medicine, soaking up culture, teaching people better ways to move through life. So I've always admired your work and your efforts, and also you've had a remarkable effect on my own life and my consciousness. So it's a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. So let's talk just a little bit about the here and now. You're coming through California on the heels of time spent in Arizona. I know that's a place that's come very dear to you. So what do you have going on there? Talk about your work there, the land, and the community that you've found and immersed yourself there.
Sure. Oh, Arizona. She makes my heart sing. It's been an interesting journey getting to know a new ecology over the past 5 years that's as biodiverse and rich as the Sonoran landscape. You know, when we think of the desert, I think most people wonder, is there really food in the desert? Is there really anything going on? And there truly is, especially in this area. I spend a lot of time between Tucson and Bisbee and the border of Mexico. You know, Mexico used to really reach farther north, so it's old Mexico, really. And I found my place there about 5 years ago, studying rainwater catchment, earthworks, and really just learning how to work and move and coexist with water as an element and as a teacher in my permaculture practices. I would consider it one of my second homes, but as you know, I'm based in Asheville, North Carolina, in the Appalachian Mountains. And so I suppose on my polynodal constellation of places that I live and I frequent, the Sonoran Desert has become a well-earned place in my constellation.
Right on. And what was the draw that initially brought you there in terms of, food and medicine and community? Like, how did you find your way to that specific area, and how's that unique to your work?
Sure. Well, it's funny, about 5 years ago, I saw a post that Brennan Blazer Bird had put out on the internet about his experience doing a permaculture course with the Watershed Management Group. And there was just something in my bones. As soon as I read his experience and what he was sharing, I just knew that I had to go. And so I went. So I made my way out to the desert that summer and took the course and immediately fell in love with the ecology. Soon after that, I had made some friends and I just continued to travel there. I had been living bicoastally at that point between California and North Carolina for many years. But it just felt like it was time for a shift, and I was really being called to the desert. And so at this point, I've really started to embed myself in the community there, really around self-care and people who are coming into conscious, like alcohol-free event spaces and really working on their self-work in a collective fashion. And working and have befriended a lot of folks who are actually indigenous to the area. And so it's been a really beautiful experience to build this other level of community where not only am I fascinated with the ecology, but I'm fascinated with the people, because it takes a certain type of skin to live in the desert. It can be a pretty rough place. So, yeah.
Sounds awesome. And the reason I kind of started there, other than it being the kind of your most recent stop, is the one I'm least familiar with. Because I've traveled and spent time with you in Costa Rica and know some of your teachers and peers there. Obviously, Swanee and Asheville, we swim in some of the same circles. And of course, we both spend a lot of time together and separately in the foothills of the Sierras, Nevada County, Grass Valley, etc. So I was curious, what's the word you use?
Polynodal.
Polynodal. Because you were already pre-Arizona, polynodal. Yeah. And so to add a new spouse, if you will, to the harem of locations that you call home, had me curious. And of course, you first brushed, with the desert when you started going to Burning Man. And I know that was connected to your art. And that's kind of how I met you. You were like, getting involved in sustainability, permaculture through recycling, through waste management, but you were also making art, influence and actually out of trash and turning it into useful art or just cool things or something other than landfill. So those are some humble beginnings, yet righteous intentions. And now here we are over a decade later, and you're doing all kinds of work that's sprouted out of those nascent beginnings. So I wanted to ask you, even before I met you, you already had like a thing for sustainability, for permaculture, even just internally before you started to learn and build with teachers and elders. So where does that come from? Where was your first sort of like, holy shit, I want to do things different? And where does that come from?
Wow, great question. Great lead up to that question. I've actually been thinking about that a lot today, so this is great timing. Well, my first festival, I was 13 years old. And my father, who raised me, he is an old-time and bluegrass musician. And he took us all as a family, rented an RV, went to a bluegrass festival. I believe it was in Arcata, Florida. I grew up in Southwest Florida. And I remember walking around this campsite and just, the festival in general. It was a very small family festival, and people were playing music everywhere, on and off stage. And I was just enamored because growing up in a household where instruments were being played pretty regularly by my father and having friends and picking circles out in the front yard, I grew to love and see music as nectar and a vital life force for me and in my practice and in my life. So to go to a festival for the first time as a young girl, I couldn't help but actually witness overflowing trash cans and a level of consumption that really shocked me. And I remember going back home and having so many questions and not really getting a lot of answers. When my mother and I were going through storage, like maybe a couple years ago, I found this drawing that I had made about my school, like with crayons. And I've been trying to get my school to recycle as a response. Very young. And I just had questions. I'm like, why are we doing things this way? Like, what is our responsibility? What is our impact if we're choosing to gather? Is it conscious? Is it in alignment with our ethics? Do we have ethics around how we gather when it comes to what we're consuming? Or are we just unplugging from reality and we're not really concerned with how we're consuming and where those things go after the party is over? So that was really stemmed at a young age. I remember we had a recycling bin growing up, but we weren't using it, so I got my family to recycle. I don't think my efforts were really successful at my school getting us to recycle, but I know that I pushed really hard. And so that, really brought me into another area of resourcefulness that I gleaned as a child, which was growing up on job sites of houses being built. My father is a general contractor. My mother is still a real estate broker. And I have a lot of fond memories of dumpster diving as a child because we were constantly on job sites, and their office space also butted up to another construction company that had gems in the desert, in the dumpster. And so I was just, trash picking since a very young age to have materials to make art and to just freeform multimedia, exploration as a child, which, later brought me into my BFA at Florida State University. And I remember meeting you just as I was starting to finish up my BFA there. And I really brought that curiosity to, you could say, the canvas, but for me it was more sculpture and later installation art at Spirit of Swanee, to really just get people to be as curious as I was about these things that we're consuming and what we're doing when we're done with them. A lot of the materials through college I was using were actually water bottles and grocery bags and a lot of refuse off of dance floors and in green rooms, as you know, really actually taking refuse from the stage and from the dance floor to turn that into art to get people to think about their time on the dance floor and in these gathering spaces. So
yeah, it makes sense because you're always ahead of the curve with a lot of the sort of missions. So when you think about recycling, whether it was with your family or with your school, or even in the early days with Swanee, you'd be met with indifference or even somewhat discouragement, not for any sinister reasons other than the same reason, we were talking off air about me being defensive about stuff when I was younger, because you just don't want to be told how it is or what to do. And unfortunately, certainly back then, maybe even from a woman, so you're up against that, right? But also it's more important to frame it in a positive sense that you were early, that you had this innate understanding of alignment and also consumption with regards to substances and garbage, and that all these years later it's major. It's sustainability, reusable, everything has become normalized, and so you can kind of just know and understand that you were instrumental in even just planting some of those seeds early on. And I think it's important to kind of acknowledge that the culture has evolved. Obviously, it's far from perfect. Just the other day, we were at Halloween having this blissed out, amazing 2-hour journey with Pretty Lights live band, and walking away from the stage, the litter, it sucks all that dopamine and good energy that you just like are on top of the world. You just dance with your
like we're still here.
Yes, it's very sobering.
Yeah.
And that's something we picked. I think it really hit me when we moved out west and we saw that people are far more conscious and aware of that. And there's even a song that they play at the end of the night, so everybody picks up their shit. And like you tried to bring that back. And you have successfully in some ways, and other ways, it's still a work in progress. But I think that consciousness, it's important to acknowledge that you were a part of that as early as anyone in my sphere.
Yeah.
And tip of the cap to you on that. And same for the art scene. You did the little detour to FSU when we met, and I accompanied you back there a few times, and you really had plugged into a super cool, cutty art scene there that really is not the type of stuff you see at every university. And if you do, you really got to seek it out. So you did, and you were part of that too. How did you kind of make the leap from identifying as primarily an artist, an activist, to, because I know you got involved with event production and you've worked for festivals, and so I don't want to give that short shrift, but I do want to also focus on things that are your own. So how do you make the leap to entrepreneur, medicine maker, from festival goer, recycle activist, burner? I mean, now you have several businesses and you travel around tending to them and sourcing the materials yourself responsibly. Like, where does that leap happen?
I think for me, it comes back to the mycelial network of allies that I have, because I've woven this, I have this constellation of places that I visit. And a lot of those places for many years were informed by the festivals that you and I have frequented. And so the invitation was there to come and clean the land and tend to the land during these events. And then my relationship grew with the land because I was, at a festival sometimes for a week to sometimes 3 weeks, like at Burning Man. And so I really started to grow in with the land itself as a steward, and also with the family of people that tend to these gatherings as producers and production assistants and staff and volunteers. And it was through that the invitation really came for me to, I think, take the next step into my truth and into my offerings for the community. I've always identified as a community herbalist, and what I mean by that is my focus has always been on really creating accessibility to self-care, specifically in social gathering spaces like events and festivals. And I think I really just felt seen at a certain point where I started having producers ask me, hey, Trash Lady, back then, I was going by Jill Trashley, and I was assisting Recycle Michael with a lot of event work up and down the West Coast. And I started to get the invitation to bring an elixir bar to festivals as an experiment, as a social impact project, long before this NA movement has trended. And that was, we're entering our 10th year next spring with the NOHM Collective, which is the project that I founded and have been curating. And really, it was the invitation, I would say, and it was the recognition of the many festivals and many years that, aside from my trash sorting, I was dosing people left and right with local honey, golden milk, tinctures. I just wanted to take care of my people, because a lot of us were working in gig economy in our 20s. We didn't have health insurance. There was a lot of substances out in the field, and whether or not you're partaking, it's, food security and water is huge, especially when you're living in more of a tent encampment and not in a home with all of the amenities that are typically available to you. And so working in the gig economy and really living event to event for many years, I just assumed that role really with no agenda. And with the invitation, I ended up putting together my first elixir bar in North Carolina by the invitation of Clayton Garr for Connection Festival, because he actually didn't serve alcohol at his festival at all. And we had actually met at Lucidity, which is another festival that doesn't serve alcohol. And that request just became more prominent, with people catching wind of what I was doing and really helping me make that shift from trash sorter and eco-educator into kind of swimming upstream to the bar, the watering hole, which
Right.
is not what I expected to ever be stewarding. But man, has it been more effective getting people to really open up and really get that curiosity going and to really make some shifts in their life. You know,
I mean, who would have thought it's better to go to a common watering hole than like sorting through shit and garbage?
Yeah,
Shocker.
No one wants to be told how to live better or where to put their thing at the end of a broken cycle, which is our waste system.
But those shifts, not to interrupt, but those shifts sorting trash with you were so humbling and educational.
Yeah.
The conversations that were had and
Oh, yeah.
explaining what goes where and why and just it makes you want to make less of it when you have to deal with it.
True that.
So anyway.
Oh, it's drinking me down like a riptide on my insides, and I think I'm gonna drown. Oh, got lost between the sound, couldn't hear the notes between us when the flame was going out.
The invitation to curate elixir bars. Obviously, we've watched that blossom.
Mm-hmm.
Just on my way down here, I had a work call with my fellow podcaster, Wes. And he said, "Who are you talking to down there?" I said, "Oh, my friend Wren. You might have known her as Jill, the NOHM Co." He's like, "Wait, Sonic Bloom Elixir Bar? I love that place." So to some people, you're not the trash lady. You're the elixir bar stewardess or bar keep, if you will. And so, let's talk a little bit about that. I know it was an uphill climb to get to the point where they were asking you to come and you weren't begging to vend.
Yeah.
What was that like? How did you navigate the resistance or the naivete?
Well, I feel like I had a somewhat similar experience to a degree with waste management. I feel like I've been somewhat of a pioneer species in a collective group of people with common interests to really help kind of regenerate the new way or lay, a few more cobblestones down to get us to the next phase of our growth as a community, really wanting to keep gathering, but to also be more socially responsible. I feel like I came into stewardship of the bar in a very similar way as what I was doing with waste management, in that it wasn't trending yet. It trended later. And it was more of a spark or an idea of someone in power wanting to support that shift. But there wasn't always resources for it. And there wasn't always enthusiasm to be as forward-facing. I remember with working on composting operations and waste management with Envision Festival for many years, that they were one of the first festivals to really let me go all the way on social media and to plaster signage all over the festival to really get it in people's faces. They even let us put the Eco Hub in the center of the village one year, which was like so radical, because usually waste management is pushed off to the side. No one knows where we are, and we really don't get the visibility or the exposure that we deserve for the work that we're doing, and for that to be an educational, interactive experience. So I feel like it was the vote of confidence, and in some ways there was some financial support that came through, but it was more so them loaning me the space to execute the idea, and knowing that it wasn't going to be, there wasn't going to be a high profit margin in the beginning, because this was still a seed that we were planting and watering after my years of doing waste management. And I feel like it took some time to really get this movement off the ground, because I look at the different elements of what it looks like to come into a bar, interact with your bartender, and receive a consumable and walk away. And what's been interesting about the Elixir Bar experience is that we've been able to create more of a destination location than being put in a vendor row. And so I think that's one of the differences that made this experience very unique, is that you really had to seek us out. And if you found us, we were like one of your spots that you frequented.
It was a hang.
Yeah, you bring all your friends.
You don't just get the drink and bounce, you hang.
Yeah, you hang. Like, we curate a lounge. We've had tea lounges set up. We set up an apothecary at Lucidity. I was curating Plant Medicine Way for many years, which was not just the elixir bar, but it was a stage where we actually educated on plant medicine and herbalism. And we had a slew of very carefully curated medicine people in the space. And so really, I feel like in the sense that this was becoming an enterprise for festivals, there was less pressure on us making money, but I also was very pushed into a place of having to be extra resourceful in order to pull this thing together. And I remember at a certain point at Lucidity, we were in a carport and we had some handmade tables and we had this beautiful setup. But I just remember being like, if I have to put up another carport or easy up, and if I lose one more piece or if that leg snaps, I'm over it. Like, I'm an artist and I'm operating inside of the same thing that I have put in a dumpster time and time again, which is temporary structures that just are built with planned obsolescence. Like, I'm sure anyone out there listening has had an issue, maybe like a love-hate relationship with your easy up pop-up tent. I know I sure have. And that's what really entered this intersection came about when I was introduced to Greg Fleischman, who's based out of Culver City in LA. He's produced beautiful structures on playa for many years. He goes out to Thailand to work with Wonderfruit. He's got amazing network of projects going on between Black Rock City and Fly Ranch, as well as a lot of installs in Los Angeles. And he and I got together and designed a state-of-the-art, zero waste, beautiful 20 by 20 foot wooden structure that goes together like a puzzle. There's no hardware, there's no waste, you print it once. We've had a few pieces replaced at this point, but in general, it was like the dream. It's really what kept me going, because it felt like in order to really make the shift in this endeavor of really bringing people into the watering hole, like, I needed a more classy, fun, beautiful place that people wanted to sit for a while, talk to us, be enamored by the space, and just feel this nervous system regulation that I think comes from this structure that we designed together. And that he very graciously gifted the collective so that we could keep doing this. So that was a big turning point for me to really make it this serious gesture. And that's when it started turning into a business. When I ended up having assets now that I needed to transport and store, and really this movement was now being co-stewarded by not only me, but several people on the team that come from all over the country to really bring this to life. And it's been a beautiful thing to watch unfold.
Yeah, it's incredible. When I saw it at Sonic Bloom last year, I was blown away at the aesthetics, the vibe, the energy, your team. Like, everybody was so right for the situation. And I think back to how much I loved the Nascent version that you did with Sarah Wu at Eclipse, where I got Goop and Leland and to play the back-to-back night, and that was like, that felt triumphant. And in retrospect, the 6 year or 5 years between, you learned a lot of lessons, made a lot of connections, evolved. One of the things that has changed is products. Like, you had an apothecary at Eclipse, and you had an elixir bar, but not everything was branded the GNOME. There was no MerTails yet. So as you pour us, what's the appropriate nomenclature? I know mocktail is kind of frowned upon. What would you call it? What are you working with these days?
I call this a MerTail.
MerTail.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a MerTail. It is the bridge between the cocktail and the mocktail. The fins go both ways.
Cool. And tell us about this product, like how it came to be, and anything you want to tell the people about how you make it.
Sure. Well, the one that I've just poured for you here is called the Exhalation Mojito. And I think you'll really enjoy this one based off of knowing what I know about your flavor profile and your interest in sweets.
Yeah. It's great. What's in it?
So bubbly and refreshing, all of the MerTails are typically poured with a base of ice and club soda. And what I do is I create the concentrates that go into the cup. And I have to say, it's been it's been a wild ride coming into a curative space where I've really treated the apothecary like my canvas. And I've gotten to work with cacao and turmeric and many, many herbs coming from the different bioregions that a lot of these festivals were occurring at between the Sierra foothills. We've got the Sonoran Desert, Appalachia, and the jungles of Costa Rica. These are really some of the main places that I've started sourcing herbs from. There's a level of wildcrafted herbs that I go myself out into the field to gather, and that's a very spiritual experience for me. And then I also work with permaculture farms and organic herb farms to really source the rest of these herbs with a lot of ethics behind it, because, organic farming makes up less than 2% of farming in North America. And when you think about that, less than 2%.
Yeah.
It's like, what is going into our food system? And how can we call certain things medicine? When they're being sprayed and the water and the livelihoods of the people. I mean, it's a full spectrum approach when you look at growing food and growing herbs and then bringing that into the context of what medicine really is. And it's not just what's in your cup right now, it's the entire journey of what it took to get there. And so for me, my journey was traversing the terrain of my career and the evolution of going from the end of the waste stream all the way up to when the first seed is planted in the ground, and really building that relationship with every step of the way. And that took many years. I mean, some of these formulas I've been working on for about 10 years. I started with my golden milk, and I made that for the first pop-up we ever did with the gnome. And like I said, we're entering our 10th year in April, which is just, it's amazing. And I think that really I turned to the community to really crowdsource what we need in these environments. And so I was curating products that were wonderfully formulated by many brands throughout the country that I really believe in. And I've created those relationships with those folks to really bring their medicine to life. And at the same time, I was playing around myself, figuring it out. I was making infusions with tea and with herbs and syrups, and really just like playing around to see what stuck, what landed, and looking at the environments that we were gathering in. Like the jungle in Costa Rica has a completely different impact on the body than when we're at Lucidity in the Santa Barbara hills, the Santa Ynez foothills. And looking at that difference in ecology, you can draw some nuances to what the body needs to feel supported, but then we can also look at more broad brushstrokes like hydration, digestion, stimulation, relaxation. And so I really wove a lot of those common themes into the MerTails over the course of several years before they ever became branded the MerTails. I just was moving on this theme of elixirs as mixers, and like, how can I really incorporate support on a systemic level for the body that really can marry the environment. And if we're in Costa Rica, like, we should be sipping on herbs from Costa Rica, Same with these different areas that we do our pop-ups in. And so I think it took, it really took a long time to figure that out. And I can say that my energy was really focused on the gig economy, event work. We're going from festival to festival. I come back to Asheville, I rest, I reset. And I started trickling some products into the local business network in Asheville with some friends that own businesses like breweries and restaurants. And they're like, what are you up to? Like, let's try this like mocktail thing in Asheville, a city that's like overrun with so many options for libations. I mean, it's really, what we've got going on there is beautiful. We have beautiful, clean drinking water, and there's, a lot of breweries, there's distilleries, but there really wasn't much in the non-alcoholic category. So simultaneously, I was starting to get some products out into the Asheville network, but I was really focused on events. And it's really been over the past few years that I've been able to redirect my energy back to refining my formulas and then coming out with this MerTails line to really encapsulate, the last better part of a decade out in the field and on the dance floor.
Word. I love that. That was a great answer. And it kind of took us through all the different locations and chapters. And I know you obviously from, aside from our personal connection, festivaling, and I've been, our first visit to Envision was together, and you've you have an incredible and rewarding and reciprocal relationship with the festival, and some really, deep, important teachers and pioneers and producers and people that not only make Envision happen, but year round are stewards and contributors and community members in Costa Rica. But you also have that in Asheville, and I'm developing it in the desert. I know you have a smaller but tightly knit group in Nevada City and Grass Valley. Many of them I also call friends. But Asheville is the heartbeat. And I've known you as building your thing, the Gnome, and everything that's blossomed out of that through festival world. But what I understand just by following along with your posting and your sharing is that you're developing a brick and mortar situation in Asheville, which is for a variety of reasons is quite different than a collapsible watering hole that is open for the better part of a week. And what really makes this complicated is owning, operating, managing a brick and mortar place where you're serving consumables is usually the type of business that you need to be present for almost all the time, just because of the nature of the business. Yet, because of the nature of your work in a macro sense, medicine making, sourcing, traveling, multiple communities, plus you haven't given up on festival world, you just distilled it to the most important stuff. So how did you arrive at the idea of a brick and mortar, and how are you juggling not just opening that, but now, maintaining it while still being out here, spending time in Ohio, Santa Cruz, Arizona, and now obviously you mentioned off air, you have global aspirations around the corner. How does it work? Well, let's start with, tell me about your spot in Nashville and the community, supporting that, and then the balancing act.
Sure. Yeah, my wandering feet have really been remiss to open a brick and mortar for some time, and I feel like I really got my fill over the past 5 years from being in collaboration with the Asheville dispensary in West Asheville. This other invitation came about from Jimmy, who is the founder and the steward of the Asheville dispensary vision, which is to bridge cannabis with herbal medicine and to create a lounge and a space where people can feel comfortable to come in and to really level the playing field and look at the marriage of how cannabis is a plant just like many other plants, and that there's a synergy that can happen when you're really guided in a way to find, what dosage works for you, what other plant allies are there, really what can come to what might be a root issue with a illness that you're having. And to do it in a space that really, I think, changes the energy around how we do look at cannabis. You and I have met and been with this plant ally extensively throughout our lives, and my experience in California has been totally different from my experience in North Carolina with the regulations and with the way in which this amazing master plant has been brought to market. And so because I have a long-standing relationship with this medicine, this collaboration has really preceded and given me training wheels to even come in 5 years later to wanting to open up my own brick and mortar. And so we designed this concept where we could bring the Gnome offerings that we keep on the road in the heart of West Asheville and have it be available every day through mindful consumption, through the cup, through hot and cold beverages ranging from throughout the Americas, and really just creating a safe, sober space in Asheville for people to gather, whether you were traveling through or if this was your neighborhood joint. And so what that provided for me was the ability to help curate a brick and mortar, and I wasn't responsible for the day-to-day. Jimmy really supported me in my artistry and in my curation of creating a space, and he and his team ran it. And I mean, that was a perfect marriage for me. I wasn't just a distributor. I've been training and educating the staff over the years and really getting to play with this menu. At this point, I've designed hundreds of menus for myself, and I've really actually helped and done consulting for other people around the country to open elixir bars. And it's really been a huge part of of my offering is like, how do we actually do this? And how do we normalize this in society when people are still like, do I tip for an elixir? Seeds. And so for us to have this marriage of hemp dispensary with herbal elixir bar, we've been able to find success in that. And so that's brought me into now launching our tasting room and our bottle shop at the site of where all the medicine is made, which is separate from that building. And this is also in West Asheville. It's a sweet brick building on a hill.
Is that the one that you did in your stories where you were showing the steps and your whole way down with all the, or was that in Arizona?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
In your Instagram stories or Facebook stories, you were like on this stairway outside.
Oh, that was my house.
Step by step. Okay.
Yeah, I was talking about mulch and things.
Disregard. We'll strike that.
Okay.
I'm going to clap back in.
Okay. So the transition of doing this collaboration and being able to stay on the road when I pleased and to bring my offerings to these other festivals, I really got to learn what it takes to run a brick and mortar, you know, what I would do, what I wouldn't do. Is this a viable option for me? Does this support my lifestyle? Or can I rest easy knowing that because of my network, I'm able to still have an offering like this in Asheville and not have to be necessarily there every single day? Like, how can I support from afar to really make this thing a success? And as of last week, we have opened a second Asheville dispensary in Jimmy's hometown in Chattanooga. The bar is gorgeous. And so at this point, there's now 2 elixir bars that are really well curated with the lounge, with the hemp dispensary integration. And that is an amazing place to be, I think, in this day and age, as we see a lot of places opening up around the country. And we've also just launched and opened our bottle shop and tasting room. And that is at the site of where my commercial kitchen is and where my office space is. And I couldn't do it without my team. You know, I've really been working diligently to expand my team to create a safe and inclusive work environment where the women who work with me are also medicine keepers and have their own aspirations. And in true Know Me fashion, my goal with this project, aside from MerTails, but really like the umbrella, the foundation with the gnome, is to help cultivate, collaborate, and consume in a mindful way where we can all be in our rawest self-expression. And so I'm so grateful to be able to work with local women and men, many people who've actually over the years moved to Asheville after working with us, to really cultivate something special there. And I'm calling it Brick, Mortar, and Pestle because you know I love a good play on words. So yeah, we've been really playing around with intimate programming. We've had some dance parties out front. We have bottle shop hours now, and it's been really sweet to really cultivate this experience. And it's low key, we're not open every day. The goal isn't to be accessible all the time because we have our projects that we work on as individuals. So, we're open a few days a week, a few hours a day. And it's really easy, I think, in this fast-paced world with all of this pressure and, just there's so many things to do and so many places to be. I'm not trying to be in competition with other businesses locally, but I think establishing some, exclusive hours, it really makes it a sweet treat if you can get by and see us, catch a workshop, catch a live show. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we will put the website in the show notes so you can check out Brick, Mortar, and Pestle. And all things the NOHM Co. and MerTails. So yeah, that'll be clickable in there. I'm really stoked for you just hearing the huge plans that you have that are already underway, having been there for a lot of it and seen even more of it from afar. And just a remarkable journey. Anything else you want to let people know while we have their attention?
What I'd like to imbue is continued curiosity. I feel like when we come into these public and social gathering spaces, there's like this yearning for us to really connect with each other. And what I often find is that in that connection with other people, we're able to connect with ourselves. And so finding those allies in the plant community that can really support those interactions and better yet, even come home with you to be in your daily life. I really encourage people to look past, what's been served to us in the mainstream around what we're consuming, because there is this beauty that happens when you're able to connect to the wild, or you're able to connect with plants in your own front yard, and it really opens up a larger conversation. And so I feel like, a big part of the work that we've been doing is really encouraging this like conscious consumption and conversation that's really steeped in tradition. And that really can go back to your own lineage or to where you're living in general. So be curious and look into what's growing around you, and see who has been supporting you in these connection points that you have, with friends and family when you're out on the town or in the comfort of your own home. Like, really, how are you filling your cup?
That's always been your catchphrase, conscious consumption steeped in tradition. It's never been more applicable than now. And for anybody out there that's listening that hears mocktails and elixirs, let it be known, Wren and the Gnome do pour spirits from time to time at festivals. And I think that the sort of us and them factor has been a big turnoff. People are like, I want to drink, I'm not going there. And people saying, I don't want to drink, I'm not going there. And we can all consume consciously together. And occasionally with spirits, and that's always consciously poured and responsibly sourced. And I think that speaks to how much not only you've grown, but that the festival culture has grown to a place where it can all happen in one space and responsibly, with conversation and community being the feature, not intoxication or the rage. And at the same time, we're still dancing, we're still talking, we're still hanging out. It's a beautiful thing. So I think that's a good note for us to walk off on, because our friends are pulling up in the driveway. I want to reiterate, this is an amazing space, thanks to Kelly Marie and the Art and Zen Tea House here in Moss Landing, just outside of Santa Cruz. If anybody is ever in the vicinity and wants a cool thing to do, a nice date, cup of tea with your homeboy or homegirl, this is the spot.
And I'll just add one more space in which to have your cup filled if you're taking yourself out for any festivals in the coming year, 2024. We will be back at Envision Festival with Village Witches. We're very excited about that. We'll be offering our elixir bar as usual, and we'll also be offering some really beautiful educational herbal experiences through the VIP experience of Envision. And in addition to that, we're really excited to make it out to Texas for the eclipse that will be coming in hot this spring. So definitely, if you're on your way out to Texas for that, check us out. We'll be hanging out with the Permaculture Action Network, Placemakers Tea House, and we'll also be supporting an herbal first aid program to help with any little nicks and wounds and any issues that you might be having on site. Please come check us out. We'd love to fill your cup and nourish you.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That Eclipse Festival looks dope. I do want to also shout out Permaculture Action Network, Ryan Rising, dear friend to both of us, along with you, majorly responsible for a consciousness shift for me, and I know he's affected numerous other lives. We've gone to Permaculture Action Days that he's curated together, separately. He does incredible work. He was one of the first non-music guests on this pod, and I continue to learn from and admire Ryan Rising. So shout out to Ryan and the Permaculture Action Network. And thank you, Wren Lizabeth, the NOHM Co. The link will be in the show notes. God bless, and we'll see you next time.
From my hands, looks like venom to you, don't it now? An olive branch in my right hand, and a white flag in my left. You won't let me say
want to say thank you and a deep bow of gratitude to the lovely and talented Marya Stark for that insightful and illuminating conversation. And of course, the same to Wren Lizabeth. Such a deep dive, such a great chat. Probably the first of many that we do on the pod, I hope, because I really like what she brings to the pod and to our lives. And I say the same about Marya Stark, just getting into her catalog and her process and her just, it's a wonderful thing, and it's new topography for me in a lot of ways, and just spread the wings further. And with that, like we always do about this time, the vibe Junkie Jam, and I'm going to play a track that Marya is featured on with super homie of hers and somebody I'm very fond of myself, Robbie333. The song is called God Morning. It's from a couple years ago. It's a collaboration where Marya is featured on Robbie's track. So that's how we're going to go out. You're hearing Sari Jordan out of New Orleans off her debut EP, I Sing to the Moon. The song is called Ceasefire. And another one that's on my faves of the year feature on Upful Life. Be sure to check that out. And I'll tell you, and 2023, goodbye, God bless. I'll see you next time on the other side. Yes, indeedy.
God morning, it's God first. Where my mind goes, cause I got thirst. Parched my world, caught up in the star. Searched external validation instead of the heart. First, then I get it. I'm not blind to the many sedatives that let us live in a state of perpetual eloquence. Remembering its contrast that brings weight to any message, and its positive images that come to light after exposing negatives. Photograph it in sentences, so when I listen back, I can feel my future self talking in the present tense. It's in these moments of sweet connection that I let my faith rest in what I know has been a gift from the heaven sent. Hold it close remembrance, cause without it I'd probably be on the path of a pessimist. So I give thanks today, give my best to give. My prayer is that I contribute with love and a level of excellence. Would you really wanna go now? Go now. If you knew the way to show down, would you really wanna go now? Go now. If you knew just what you know now, would you really wanna go now? Go now. If you knew the way to show down, would you really wanna go now? Go now. If you knew just what you know now,